welcome back everybody to the ATB NFL Live Show. We're back again, mostly focusing on draft stuff because, of course, drafts is less than 2 weeks away now. I'm sure you guys are excited as well as I am. So that's definitely going to be fun. But there is one thing that we can actually talk about that could have a lot of implications depending on what kind of direction they go from here. But big signing this point in the offseason, usually it doesn't really happen, but it's a bit of a unique circumstance. OBJ to the Ravens on a 1-year contract worth up to $18 million, which I don't know about you guys. I'm going to hear what you guys think here in a minute, but I did not expect it to be anywhere close to 18 million, maybe around 10, just because the receiver market's really blown up, and he has the pedigree and everything, but $18 million to go to the Ravens for only a year. So, there's limited risk there, and they put some void years on there to help with the cap, but this all screams obviously that they're trying to make sure Lamar wants to come back, right? Like bring him back to the negotiation table. Let's figure this out. Lamar and him were apparently partying it up a little bit shortly after the signing happened, so there's positive energy there. I'm going to kick it to Tony first here. Do you think that this is a huge move for the Ravens, not only because of getting OBJ, but do you think it could push them closer to resolving things with Lamar?
Yeah, exactly. That is why I think this signing matters more to the Ravens than the OBJ signing would to any other team. If he goes to Buffalo, Kansas City, New York Jets, any of those teams, like, it's just adding a good player. But when it's the Ravens, and we saw the process, Lamar seemed to be very involved with the recruitment. He did tell OBJ, like, it's not a guarantee I'm going to be there,
right.
But he was very involved in the recruiting process, which is a great sign. So I think because of the Lamar factor and this seeming like a sign that he might be in it, sticking around for at least one more year, playing on the tag maybe, this moves the needle more than an OBJ signing would to any other team. So I think it's a really cool fit. Todd Monken's offense, they needed their number one receiver. Him playing with Lamar is just going to be so fun to watch. So really love it. I would have expected, like you said, the contract to be a little bit lower. Like, when I heard up to 18 million, my first assumption was like, oh yeah, it's probably like base 5 to 10 million, and then a bunch of upside with like different ability to earn incentives. But no, it's like a $15 million signing bonus, and then some minor like incentives to get it up to 18. So they really invested in this. Like they feel serious about what he can do for them this year. So I think it's super exciting, and it matters a lot to the Ravens because they're likely to keep Lamar for a season.
Yeah, I think that it all comes down, again, they're trying to make sure that Lamar wants to come back. And I think part of it too, and I'll get to what you think, Zach, here in a second, but I think that Lamar saying that it's not a guarantee is obviously because at this point there is nothing guaranteed, right? Because the Ravens just might not offer something that he wants to take, or another team might swoop in and actually offer something, maybe after the draft at this point. And so there's no guarantee there. But I think that Lamar is understanding, and this is maybe a sign that he is going to be willing to play on the tag if he absolutely has to, just to reset his market again for next year. Because if he wasn't, I don't think that he would have bothered to recruit anybody at this point in the process. So I think it does mean that we should expect to see Lamar play next year at least. It's just going to be, is it with the Ravens? Is it on a long-term deal? Is it with the transition tag? However it ends up working out, I'd be very surprised at this point, which is something I was worried about with him, and I'm glad it doesn't seem this way, that he's definitely going to at least play next year, I think, regardless. So that's good to see. But what do you think, Zach? Anything you want to add to that news?
This very much seems like a move from the Ravens to attempt to be like, hey, come back, please. We know
we did something, guys. Look, we did something.
However, I do think it is worth noting, and I'm not saying that OBJ is a bad player, but this is his 10th year in the league. He has 2 torn ACLs.
Yep,
is a lot of things, and like, I find it very interesting that because I don't think he's going to come close to the incentives is the thing. I don't know if that necessarily is like, I think it's a $15 million contract. I don't think he leads the team. He might lead the team in touchdown receptions. I think that definitely might happen, but like yards and stuff like that, he hasn't played did he play at all last season?
No. He did not sign or play.
I understand that, like, it's like really nice and cool and all that stuff. And again, I'm not saying that OBJ is a bad player, but he hasn't played in a year. So there should be some of that before we like just all jump in and be like, oh man, this could be interesting.
Yeah, I think
because there will be that latency. I mean, not to the same degree because Watson sat out a lot longer, but that was rough to watch him come back.
Yeah, I do think where the jumping off point is important though, because yeah, he's up there. He's coming off the second torn ACL. There's no guarantees there. But the last time we saw OBJ play football, he was playing it like a top 5 receiver in the league, on his way to winning Super Bowl MVP. So like the most recent memory we have of him is pretty damn incredible. And you could argue like he probably could have played towards the end of last season. Didn't, so he's probably fresher now. I think there's an upside case to be had in that downside case as well.
Yeah. And hopefully, I'm not one of those people who's going to be like, oh, take away the catch and OBJ is off. No. OBJ is an amazing receiver, but like, it's just like hopefully there is no like latency of like you haven't been on the field for over a year.
Yeah, there's a lot of people though that, like you said, Zach, you kind of alluded to it, that view OBJ as a guy that's like, oh yeah, they'll catch his rookie year and everything. It's like there was a 3-year period where he was rivaling the Antonio Browns, the Julio Jones of the world for one of the best receivers in the NFL, like legitimately. And whether you're looking at stats, just the eye to everything you want to look at, he was up there with those guys. And injuries happened. The Cleveland situation, which again, one of the weirdest situations receiver quarterback I've ever seen. That is what it is. I think that he has enough left in the tank where, like, ideally he's your number 2 receiver. And, if Bateman can come back healthy and develop into that number 1, that'd be the best thing for the Ravens, obviously long term.
And they have Mark Andrews to lean on, which is nice.
Exactly. Yeah. So ideally he's the 3rd target, is what you're hoping. Like and that's just because of Bateman showing up big.
Yeah, and I do think it's worth mentioning, and this was something that is very interesting that I was listening to over the past week after his signing, is OBJ may be a like controversial person fan wise, but as far as like in the NFL and in a locker room, OBJ is a very beloved player.
People like
because
him for sure.
People like there's like the whole of like a lot of players and like wide receivers want to be like OBJ, but he's also one of those players that if you're on his team and you're in his wide receiver group, we saw that picture on the boat, and like while it had the negative things afterwards, and I'm like kind of like copying what Bomani said on his podcast, though he's one of those players that's like, hey, come out and we have a week off, come out and hang out on my boat for the weekend, like let's have a nice weekend and hang out and chill. He's one of those players that's like that the Ravens also probably thought about this, not as well as the play of like, hey, our locker room's a bit broken up right now, let's bring somebody in that we know that can like have an instant impact to bring this group back together and be like, yeah, we're good.
It's a good point. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I'm curious as a Steelers fan. I'm not super scared of Odell because last time he was in my division, it wasn't pretty much like a wash. But again, any more weapons for Lamar in the passing game, especially them moving to a more traditional offense this year, most likely. Big Ben made a comment recently about Lamar. I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole because just not a good look. I'll just leave it at that.
There's a reason he won the Heisman.
Yeah, that with him and OBJ, and especially if that receiving core is healthy, Mark Andrews, like if they can build a true passing offense, I am a little bit concerned about having to play them. I'm not going to lie, but we'll see how that plays out. But we're going to move into doing a segment here this is our draft segment for the week. You've probably seen multiple people on YouTube and other platforms do this type of stuff where they go over a my guys versus not my guys list for different positions. That's what we'll be doing today for each position in the draft. We're going to start with quarterback, kind of make our way down the list through offense, defense, all that stuff. So we're going to start. I'm going to give the floor to Tony first here. We're going to start with quarterback. Give me first your my guy, your top my guy for this draft for sure.
So this is a name that I think we talked about last week, and I am sorry, I'm probably stealing this off of your board, Shayne.
Yeah, you are probably.
But you made me go first, and you have to live with that decision.
I wanted to give you the first.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson, man.
That's okay. That was my extra. That was my extra.
That was your extra. Okay.
Yeah. UCLA QB. I think he deserves to be day 2 pick. I would pick him over Hendon Hooker personally. I think Shayne, you may have alluded that you're on the same train there last week. Yeah. He's likely a backup with like low end starter upside, but man, he's fun to watch play. And I think like where Hendon Hooker has, and I'm gonna get into his concerns in a minute, so I don't know why I'm killing it right now, but. He has concerns with like having played in an NFL style offense. Dorian Thompson-Robinson has shown the ability to progress through his reads. He doesn't have the best pocket presence in the world, I'd say. He's a little jumpy out of there, but he's got the NFL arm strength. The ball comes out really hot. He's got to learn the touch aspect. He knows how to get through his reads. He's consistently getting like all the way to his 3rd read. He's got the dual threat ability. I think he's he's not going to ever be like, I don't think he's going to have the Jalen Hurts career arc, but if you're betting on somebody to have that incredibly unlikely career arc, this is the guy. So I'm just a huge fan. I'd want him as a backup in Buffalo easily. I'd want him as a backup on any team with starter upside on some teams. So just really love the guy.
Let me guess who not your guy is.
Yeah, I mean, we'll each do our my guy first.
Okay.
I'll let you go next.
Actually, no,
I buried the lead a little bit.
Okay, well, this would work because my guy is Hendon Hooker.
Oh,
all right. Only because I probably know a lot of Tony's concerns, and having watched him, this is probably the only quarterback that I've watched like consistently over his whole career, because he was at Virginia Tech.
Yep.
And then so like, yes, there's a lot of concerns given the fact that one, he played great football in Virginia Tech, and there is a fundamental problem in Blacksburg on the offense, and it has come through from many past alumni. You have seen it with a lot of players. They do not run an NFL offense, let alone a college offense. They are running high school plays in Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
And it is a detriment. Now, there is no reason why Ryan Willis should have started over Hendon Hooker. There is no reason why half of the guys that were at Virginia Tech should have started over Hendon Hooker, and there was issues because Justin Fuente was an idiot.
Yeah.
Now, if you put him with an actual offensive mind who knows what they're doing, he has shown all of the other aspects on the field that you would want of battling back, having the leadership. He has the arm, he has the touch, he has all those things. If you actually put him with somebody who can finally look at him and be like, hey, we're going to teach you the ways of actual football, because you've been deprived of that not your entire college career, because I wouldn't say he was deprived of that in Tennessee. That was just a beautiful situation.
Beautiful situation where he wasn't playing football.
Well,
practice.
but finally set him up to show off what he could do. But that was the issue, because Virginia Tech did not do that. They held all their quarterbacks back. The only real position that if you had any luck was Khalil Herbert or the offensive line, because the only times that Virginia Tech ever shows up is when the offensive line and the running backs go off. So he's played at a detriment, but also been able to show off that he has the skills and all of that stuff. He has the COVID year, so you can't really count that against him. That's going to be a bunch of people this year. With all of the other aspects, given where he could go, there is a lot of hype because of what happened at Tennessee, but I think the injury will kind of push him back to a more realistic spot, and I think he can be a solid starter in the NFL.
All right. So obviously, Tony and I kind of alluded to it whenever he started talking about my guy. My top guy was DTR. That's my guy.
Sorry,
DTR was my number two.
Yeah, but he set him up good. I don't really need to speak on him. You did a good job talking about him. So the two guys I had as backups, I'll talk about both of them a little bit, just because one is more of a gimme, and I've talked about him a lot. Based on where some people are at with him, I think at this point I can consider Bryce Young my guy, because he is my top quarterback by not a huge margin, but a pretty considerable one, about a full 15-ish picks higher than I would take any other quarterback in this draft. Again, there's just nobody in this class I think is as good at playing quarterback right now, or I think will have the potential to be this good, than Bryce Young. The only guy that I think potential-wise could beat him out is Richardson, obviously, but there's a lot of things you have to work through with him still, even though I think he's less raw than people are giving him credit for at this point. So you can even kind of consider him for some people in my guy. But
I almost made him my guy, and then I was like,
again, because it's tough, because
I've
he's
talked
gonna
about
get drafted,
him so much.
right? He's going to get drafted, so it's hard. The same thing with Young. He's going to be either the first or second pick, almost guaranteed, I imagine. So it's tough, but again, because of the size concerns, I get them. I just, at this point, with a guy like him, I've seen so many things that you just don't see often from quarterback prospects, that I'm not willing to be the guy to not take the chance on him at this point. And then the other guy, Jake Haener, I like a lot, because I think he's going to be the top, if there's a Ryan Fitzpatrick in this class, if there's a guy who's going to start the team multiple times, if there's a guy who's going to stick around for 15 years, it's him. I've
seen a lot of that
MO.
buzz.
Yeah, his MO is just he's probably a backup, but hey, if you need somebody to go out there and just do it, you could probably get it done for you sometimes. He'll stick around for a long time, and that's valuable if you take that on day 3 of the draft, which is probably where he's going to go, obviously. I think that could be really big for some teams that have question marks at quarterback, or maybe durability issues at quarterback. So that's a guy I really like as well. I think he's going to be really good in the NFL for what his role will be. So, But let's go back
I like
to
that pick a
20.
lot.
Yeah, we'll do your not my guy, and we'll do that same order for quarterback here.
So we all know who my guy is going to be. I almost did the thing and made it Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Oh my
just
God.
Because,
For the same reason that I did.
so
my
like
guy.
not because I don't think he'll work out, but just because I am lower on him than everybody else.
exactly.
But I avoided that. I didn't want to do that. So
as long as you don't take, well, you won't take my number one, but I had Bryce Young as well, just by my only concern being size, just
Right,
because
yeah,
of what
yeah,
we've been
exactly.
seeing over the past couple of seasons.
but I chose not to
speak
make him
from
not
the
my
from
guy.
from the small Alabama contingent.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Got to protect yourself there. So it is Hendon Hooker, and it is just because I liked him for a while in this process when people thought he was going to go like round 3, late round 2. And now people are saying that he should be a back end of the first round guy. And I'm saying, no, like 0 shot. I don't see it at all. He's so old. He's so damn old for where he is as a prospect.
Okay, so is the back end of the first round the Vikings thing?
Yes, I imagine.
That and then also everybody's just like, oh yeah, like anybody
into the first
25 and
round,
beyond, somebody's gonna trade up. Maybe the Raiders are gonna trade up. Maybe
so personally, the Vikings thing makes sense because it's the Vikings, and if they can get him and let him sit behind Cousins for the last couple of years, you take that shot.
So then your starting quarterback hasn't played real NFL football until he's 28 years old.
That's where we get back to. Well,
that's fucking Brandon Weeden.
But you can go to him next. You can go to him next year, or even midway through the season. But at least get him with.
He's turning 27 next year, man. This is an old guy.
I'm saying it's the same thing as Anthony Richardson. If you're drafting him, you're drafting him under the assumption that he's not starting immediately, but you get him in there.
Yeah.
You start to talk to him. That was my whole point earlier.
My thought, if I want a developmental quarterback, I have to believe in the upside case. I have to believe that he is early enough in his career, young enough where he can still develop physically and everything, where he can hit his prime and be a good NFL quarterback. If I look at the development case for Hendon Hooker, I'm hoping he hits his prime, or I'm hoping that he becomes an NFL quarterback at like 30. And I don't want that. That doesn't do anything for me. Even if he hits, I'm now just stuck in old man quarterback purgatory. The upside case is so bafflingly low
right now.
And then he's coming off of this ACL tear, sets back his development. He's coming from a Mickey Mouse offense, 2 Mickey Mouse offenses, sets back his development. That man hasn't proven that he knows how to make a read. Now, we don't know that means he can't, but we know that we haven't seen it yet. And that is a concern for somebody who is so old. I will say, best deep ball thrower in the class. He's a fun athlete on the run. He's improved every year. I understand why you might like him. I just think that if I am betting on a guy that early in the draft, I have to expect that I will get his prime years out of him with good, above average, even more than that play. And I think that he won't hit that in his prime because his prime is coming up next year, and we're talking about how he's not going to start. And by the time that he's ready, he's just going to be like on his way out. I just don't see it. I'm not in it at all.
I think that's
wait. So I have a question. By next year, do you mean like this coming season or next?
So yeah,
season?
so he's not going to play this upcoming season, right? He's coming off of a torn ACL. He's going to be 26, right? Like throughout all of
so I was saying like I think he can start next season, not like
so the season after that when he's 26, 27, and like.
I think that the problem ultimately here, Tony, and like this is kind of what Zach, what we're trying to say here is with Hendon. If I thought he could come in and play right now, right? If he was a guy that I was confident could come and start right now, taking him in the back end of the first round would be more palatable, right? But the problem is we just have not seen him play in an offense that is going to ask him to do any of the things that any NFL offense will ask him to do. Does that mean he can't? No. But with a guy like that, you cannot ask him, or I don't think it's fair to ask him to come in and play right away when he has no concept probably of the things he's going to be asked to do. Now, if he hits the ground running and like his knee's good or something like that, and like the starter gets injured and he goes and plays great, then they're going to look smart. But I think you have to factor, like, unless a team has worked with him, like, and they had a chance to meet with him and he showed everything he'd have to do to run an offense in the NFL right now, it is not worth taking him on day one and even early day 2. That's
I 100% agree with all that, but that's why I was saying unless it's the only reason the Vikings one, it kind of makes sense because they are going to start Kirk Cousins next season.
There's a
like
lot of
or
teams
this
that
this
will start their quarterback over him.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
going to
yeah.
be, can you
So,
get
but that's
something out of him early? And
yeah.
I don't think that
The
they
only
will.
team that I feel like it makes a little bit
Yeah.
of sense for is the Vikings. But I totally agree with what you're
Right.
saying, Tony. That it's not like this whole like end of first day, early day one or day two. That's a bit far fetched. Like
It's a
no,
reach for sure.
like
Yeah.
But
late
Drafting
second
Jacoby
round, third.
Brissett, 28-year-old Jacoby Brissett, 40-year-old Jacoby Brissett in the first round.
all
Well,
right, Zach. So who's your not my guy for the quarterbacks?
oh, let's go to the mayo and the coffee guy.
Okay.
Will Levis. I just don't see it. I think he is a fantastic example of like a Mitch Trubisky, just like a one, like you've seen like a flash of something and like you're like, oh, this looks really good. But there hasn't really been all of that years of it. Like there hasn't been any sort of consistency, and there's definitely some issues that he has with field vision and anticipation, which I feel like are two things. If you're going in the NFL and those are like your biggest areas of improvement, that's a problem. Because the NFL is so much faster paced, and if you didn't have the anticipation for the college game, how are you going to prepare for the NFL game? So like I don't know. That's where like the difference in like where I'm saying like Hendon Hooker's a good guy. You've seen the consistent improvement to whereas like Levis had 102 attempts, I think, in 2021. Like he wasn't even like really playing. So like I like for somebody who's going that high, that my concern there is with him.
So with Levis, he was one of my not my guys too. And so is Hendon Hooker. There is another player I have that I can talk about. But real quick with Levis, I think the problem is with him for me, there's two main things. One, I think he's a second round talent that's going to be drafted probably in the top 10, right? That's with quarterbacks, sometimes it happens. So it's kind of hard to really fault teams for that necessarily. But the one thing I'll give him credit for a little bit, or I'll kind of say that might make him look a little bit better than he is. His supporting cast this past year was the worst of all the players that are going to be drafted in the first round, like a quarterback especially. It was atrocious. I'm talking like there was not an NFL player on that roster probably on offense other than him. And that does have to factor into things a little bit because when he had a few guys last year that did end up on NFL rosters this past year, Wendell Robinson, Darian Kennard, like he had some NFL talent there. He did look a lot better. And I think but what that tells you though, again, is he's a guy that probably needs to go to a team that is prepared to put guys around him or already has guys around him. You know, I think he's going to end up on the Colts. I think that their supporting cast on offense is definitely not bad by any means. So I think he could have some early success there, but I just don't know if the upside is as high as people think. And really, I view him more as a kind of a higher floor player because I think he does a lot of things at an NFL level. It's just, is he going to get past some of the accuracy issues, the pocket presence issues? Like if he can develop some of those things, he could become a really good starter, but I don't think he'll ever be a great one is why I think taking him in the top 5 is just a lot. It is.
He was number 3 on my list, so I didn't expect to ever get to him, but he was one of my guys.
At this point, because of the conversation around him, you can definitely make that argument because people aren't viewing him very favorably for the most part.
This is a trend that I'm actually gonna like talk about for a different position too, but kind of not eliminating the 2022 tape because you can't eliminate the most recent tape, but understanding what goes into 2022 and then going back to 2021 and seeing a completely different player. Yeah. And 2021, the Will Levis hype was well-deserved. He probably should have gone in the draft then, and like he would have been a top 5 pick last year. Like off of that 2021 tape, he was damn good. He was running, so I mean, proven NFL offense, the most common offense in the NFL now. The Shanahan McVay scheme.
Whatever scheme.
It was Liam Cohen at the time at Kentucky. He did have some NFL players, like you said, Luke Fortner. He had the weapons, all that jazz, and he was not only running that perfectly, he was elevating it. He was doing what Shanahan has been after for so long. A guy that will go in and press all the buttons when Shanahan wants him to, but if the play doesn't go right, can escape and make something happen. He was, I saw like a potential like Super Bowl winning quarterback in a Shanahan scheme type quarterback in 2021. And knowing that his offensive coordinator was Rick Scarangelo last year, like I'm willing to throw that out because it's Rick Scarangelo.
Again,
the guy is just he should not be leading an offense. All the players were gone. He had started the season kind of hurt, and like just nothing came together. And so I understand being down on him because of 2022, but going off of 2021 and the proof of concept in an NFL system, I'd be willing to bet on this guy high.
Right, and I think that's totally fair, especially compared to some of the other guys outside of like like the top three for most people. Obviously, is some version of young Stroud Richardson. If he's your fourth guy and you're willing to take him high, I think that's totally fair at this point. I'll do my not the one not my guy that I still have from the quarterbacks, and then we'll move on here. Spend a lot of time on them, but this biggest position, so it makes sense. Big armed Davis Mills, aka Tanner McKee. He honestly he's a dinosaur at this point. I think
he's got that long neck. He looks like a dinosaur,
right? Well, I think
the
problem again, like if he came out in the draft in 2010, he'd be a first round pick because he checks a lot of the boxes as a thrower. He actually throws the ball on the run pretty well, even though he's not very mobile. Again, I just don't think there's a lot of playmaking upside for him, and he was playing a really bad offense at Stanford, so like there might be some potential there that we don't see. But I think that type of quarterback just doesn't really work anymore for the most part. Like even like we're talking about CJ Stroud, like he's one of the best pure passers. I think it's especially accuracy we've seen come out recently.
Yeah.
And the biggest hang up on him is like, can he play make? Can he do stuff?
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. And it's because that's what most guys have to do. And I don't think Stroud has that issue. I think he'll be fine there. But like still, it's something that's the talking point about him a lot is does he handle pressure? Can he make plays when his guys aren't open? Like that's because that's so important now. And I think McKee especially just does not have that ability really. And for a guy that some people I've seen want to take him like early day 2 from some places I've seen, I just can't do it. I don't see the starting upside there, unfortunately for him. So let's move on to running back. We'll do snake order for this one. So I'll start this time. I'm hoping I don't take one of your top guys.
If mine gets taken, I'm going to be furious because my guy's like maybe a priority UDFA.
Oh, okay, so probably not.
Okay.
My guy, Dwayne McBride from UAB. He's so fun just to watch run the football. Like if you just want to enjoy, like if you're a big football guy and you want to just enjoy someone running the football in college this year, like Bijan's obviously great, and there's a lot of great backs. Just watch Dwayne McBride play. Like he made his conference his bitch. Straight up, he did whatever he wanted to do to every defense he played in his conference with UAB. He was better than everybody, right? And you could tell, and that's why I'm so high on him, because you saw him make everyone look slow and bad in his lower level of competition at UAB. And that's what you want to see from a guy who's going to be picked in the NFL if he's at that level of competition. He does this thing, especially, and this is what I love about him the most, is I'm sure all of us here have or maybe currently, even though it's been bad for a long time, play Madden, right? So we all know, like, one of the things you do as a runner, like you have to set up angles and you have to do different stuff and make safety moves. He does that stuff in real life. He looks like he's playing Madden against a computer on rookie sometimes playing at UAB. And I think that's hilarious and I love it. I don't know if that's necessarily going to work at the NFL level, that part of his game, but everything else, I think it really works. He doesn't have the long speed necessarily, but everything else he has, I think, really quality tape at. Probably not going to be a pass catcher either, but if you're taking this guy on day 3, which is where he's probably going to go, I don't really care about that. He can be the primary runner in some backfield probably. And I think that a lot of teams would really like him a lot. So that's my guy for sure.
I love your Madden comparison there, because like it's I've been struggling to put into words, but it's exactly that. He's like omniscient as a runner. Like he's just playing from a bird's eye view. He just knows everything that's happening on the field. It is really beautiful to watch.
Yeah. But yeah, so what do you have for your my guy, Zach? We'll go to you next.
Speaking from a bird's eye view, so a college team that I love and have always loved through the years is TCU, just because they have a wonderful offense. And Kendry Miller had a fantastic season. He had 224 carries and turned that into 1,400, well, technically 1,399, but 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns. And I get that, like, TCU and the Big 12, like granted Bijan's probably going to go first, but that's a whole different conversation out of the running backs. But like, I don't feel like I hear his name come up all that much. And I just feel like the value, if he's going to be going somewhere like mid day 2, late day 2, is there.
He's probably going to go day 3 realistically.
And that's insane because, like, if we're like, we brought up that draft from from 2010 or 2011, if they were at that time, like all 3 of him, Gibbs, and Bijan are probably going to the first round, which is nuts.
Yeah,
And so it's how much the but like his value in the draft, like in this draft, is probably going to be pretty good for a lot of teams that are looking for some sort of playmaker out of the backfield.
Yeah, and I think the value is oddly enough, like it hurts him, it helps the value for whatever team gets him, but he didn't test, right? Like he's kind of injured through this process, right? Or he didn't do a lot of testing.
Yeah,
I remember we just had a
He didn't.
conversation about this in the
he didn't
ATB
test.
chat the other day. But so yeah, your potential steal early day 3. I agree. Those are two really good names. So I took a different route with this one because my philosophy on running backs is, right, you can get high end, you can get startable impact players late,
Yeah.
maybe even priority UDFA. Somebody that your Dolphins just met with, kind of, killing the sleeper pick, but Xavier Valade out of Arizona State. Man, if there is an Isaiah Pacheco in this class, I'm not saying he's Isaiah Pacheco, but the same style of just like running like his life is on the line, just violent feet, always seeking out contact. He's got a lot of issues, right? He runs upright. He's old. He's going to be 25, by the time he takes his first snaps in the NFL. But at running back, I don't want him to get to a second contract anyways. Like, I don't care. I want to draft this guy in the 7th round, and I want him to do really cool things for me for a couple of years. So the violence that he brings, and just, he's a really fun player to watch. It is Pacheco-like, where very few people run like that. Most guys now are all about like vision and balance and patience and setting up, and he's just like, nah, I'm just going to run through somebody's face and hope for the best here. And so he's a fun watch. I'd take him in the 7th round and hope that he has kind of, that Pacheco type breakout.
All right. Yeah, definitely like that. Late round running backs are always, if you can hit on them, they're really good value. Just ask the Chiefs, like you said, with Pacheco. So my top, not my guy, and I hate to do this because I think it's not because I don't think he can be successful. I think it's just he's very limited in where he can be successful, and I think it really matters what team selects him and uses him properly. Devon Achane.
Ah, shit.
He your guy too, Tony.
Yeah.
Hey, we're on the same page. He's a smaller player, obviously, 5'8", 188. And actually, one of my guys, if
Lord, he's gonna get murdered.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he has all the athleticism and speed to make that work as a certain type of player. But one, he cannot be a full down player, like 3 down player. He's just not going to happen. I think if a team uses him properly, like I think the Eagles would be really fun because again, they don't need him to be like a feature back because they don't have a feature back ever really. But again,
it's Jalen Hurts.
It just comes, exactly. It just comes down to like who drafts him and how they use him. But I think that for a lot of teams, I don't know if he'd really bring the value to be taken on like even day 2, or I think he'd have to be taken on day 3 for me to be comfortable with what might happen with him. And honestly, like, there's a guy that I was one of my guys that if I didn't go first, I was going to make sure I had that I think would be a better value later in the draft. Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State. Like I think I'd rather take a chance on him. I mean, he's even smaller, but
he's shorter, but he's stockier.
Yeah,
so I think it plays better.
How tall is he?
He's 5'5".
Yeah, he's 5'5". Like he's
my Lord.
Like, he's 5'0", He's straight 5.
Jeez.
Yeah. But like, so I'd rather take a chance on him like late on day 3 than take Achane in the 2nd or 3rd round. That's kind of my thing with him. But still a good player, just not someone I would take early. But what do you guys have?
Yeah, so my not my guy is not necessarily that I don't think he is a good player. This is more about value, and this is Jahmyr Gibbs. And it's ironic after I said last week that if the Dolphins took him with the 2nd round pick they have, I'd be like, oh yeah, and I still would be, oh yeah. But again, as I just said in the conversation with Kendry Miller, there's the issue that the running back position is not nearly as valued whatsoever, and Bijan is going to be incredibly lucky that he is getting drafted in the 1st round and gets the value of that 5th round option.
The 5th option, yeah.
But Gibbs is just a victim of what has happened to the position and the fact that it's not valuable anymore. And unfortunately, the value of that 2nd round pick could be a lot of other positions. Now, granted, there are teams like the Dolphins who, unless they sign Dalvin Cook or something like that, need a running back. So it's like, all right, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
But like the value for this position in the 1st and 2nd round, unless it's a Bijan Robinson, unless it's a Saquon Barkley, somebody who's just like game changing, is just not there anymore. So.
Yeah, what do you think, Tony? What's your not my guy? I know I stole one of them. But...
So you stole the one guy I had. I actually had to go back to the well because there was really only one guy that I was like, nah.
I like this class a lot. So.
Yeah. So it hurts me to do this because he's a player that I actually love. The other factors scare me off. And it's Tyjae Spears out of Tulane. So
Yeah.
I very much enjoy watching him play. I'm a huge fan of his game, but the hype that he's getting right now, it sounds like he's going to be a day 2 pick, and he's had a long injury history, a concerning injury history.
Yeah.
Like we're talking hamstrings all throughout this past season, torn ACL and meniscus. So he's got leg injuries, he's got wear and tear, he's gotten a lot of touches, and as much as I love the player, drafting somebody on day 2 with all of those concerns, I'm scared off of it. If he's there on the board in round 4 or 5, like I'm going to start to I'm back in on him. But where he's currently evaluated, there's too many risks for me to feel comfortable using a pick that high.
Totally fair. Yeah,
which hurts because I do love the guy.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. So we'll move on to wide receiver here. Tony, you're going to be back up. We'll go back around. Who's your my guy for receivers?
So this is it's tough because my guy, Jonathan Mingo, I've talked about him a ton on this show. So I'm not going to I wanted to bring in a different name, and it's another name in a similar big mold. And of course, all this prep work this morning, Daniel Jeremiah just tweets it out, where he's like, oh yeah, 2 guys to watch, Jonathan Mingo and Cedric Tillman. It's like, come on, man, you're stealing my thunder here. If he put that tweet out an hour from now, I'm looking great doing this show right now. But
I've been on Tillman for a while. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I was late to arrive on Tillman because I was only working off of his 2022 tape, and I'm just like, I don't see it, guys. Yeah. And so this is the player where I was talking about going kind of.
Oh god damn it! We had the exact same thought.
And looking back at 2021. If you are looking at his 2021 performance, I think he and maybe let's say he just sat out this year because he felt good enough about his 2021. Right. I think we're talking about a potential top 10 pick. Like, I think he's first wide receiver off the board. That tape is unmatched by anybody in this class. He lacks the elite athleticism, but his jumps were so good. Like, he's got the clear explosive power. He plays like you'd want a guy built like him to play. Whereas my guy is built that way and doesn't play that way. So
we'll get to that.
He is the X in this class. I am starting to think he could slip into the back end of round 1 just because of how murky the 20 to 60 of this draft class is. I would bet on him, and I'd be really excited about him just because he wins in NFL ways, and it's really exciting. So yeah, Cedric Tillman, book it.
Awesome. All right, what do you got for us, Zach? Who's your my guy? Well, other than him, I guess.
My guy was Cedric Tillman. But I do have a backup, and so before we go any further in this, I'm just going to put this disclaimer. This is the last position I have a not my guy for. I think we've established here that I'm somewhat of the weak link in the draft coverage. So I'm going to use this opportunity to solidify who I think should be the number 1 receiver drafted, and that's Quentin Johnston. Okay. And it goes back to, I felt this way for the same reason with CeeDee Lamb. And look, the Big 12 is monstrous when it comes to offense. And when you've got one guy that everybody's like, when there's no difference and there's a bunch of receivers, but they got one guy that everybody's like, oh no, this dude. Yeah, no, this is the guy. This is the guy. And man, when CeeDee Lamb was in the draft process, I was like, take him now. And I feel the same about Quentin Johnston. I just feel like whichever team gets him, they are getting an incredibly game-changing receiver who will be their number 1 and just establish a just monstrous offense for some years to come if they're able to pair it right with. It obviously depends on who gets them because positions and what team he goes to matters, right. But Quentin Johnston's my number 1 receiver, and that's I guess where I'm gonna go with this with my guy.
Okay, yeah, I understand. So for my guy, the top my guy I have, there's 2 guys I want to talk about real quickly, but I'm gonna focus on my top one. Marvin Mims, wide receiver, Oklahoma. I think that for a combination of 2 things, right? I knew you'd like that one, Tony. He does a lot of the same things very well that a lot of the receivers in this class that are going to get drafted in the first 2 rounds do. He just doesn't need to be taken in the first 2 rounds. That's kind of what it comes down to. I think a lot of these receivers, obviously, are going to be the smaller, quicker, faster type, and that's fine because the league needs those guys. But I think that taking them, late day one, early day two, isn't the best value with all the defenders that are in this class that are really good values and things like that. So if you can get a Marvin Mims on late day two, I think he can do a lot of the same things, and he actually is even really more explosive than some guys like Addison are, and even Josh Downs. Like he's got more explosive vertical speed than a lot of those guys. He can do a little bit more of the deep threat stuff. Just I think he's a really well-rounded player for a guy who's going to probably go in round 3, and I think it's a better value. Like if you're a team looking for a receiver 2 type or a receiver 3, wait till you can get Mims in the 3rd round. I think would be a better value for sure. And there's another guy I want to mention because you guys didn't get to him. This guy, he could go on either list, honestly, because of his issues, but I'm going to take a look at the positive with him. Michael Wilson out of Stanford.
Yeah.
I know I'm not saying he's going to be this guy. I just want to make that very clear. When you watch him, especially at the Senior Bowl, whenever he had clear one-on-one reps, and whenever you see the small amount of tape he did put on at Stanford, unfortunately, because of his injuries, and that's why he's not going to get drafted probably highly, he looks so much like Devontae Adams early. Early career Devontae Adams especially, he looks so much like him in terms of the way he moves, the way he runs routes. I can't get it out of my head when I watch him, and it makes me just think man, if he can just stay healthy, this could be a legit receiver 2 at least for somebody, if not more than that. And it just sucks that he's had the injury issues because I think without them he'd be looked at much more favorably. So, but I'm gonna send it back to Tony, who's not my guy for the receivers.
So I'm gonna give my true not my guy, and then there's another guy that is more of a both not my guy and my guy that I'm gonna get
more
to
like
after.
Michael Wilson for me. Yeah.
Yes, exactly like that.
Okay.
So my not my guy. I'm sorry, Zach. It's Quentin Johnston.
I knew it.
I am just completely perplexed by this guy.
Yeah,
he plays like Jordan Addison should play. Like he plays like he's tiny, and I don't like that in a big guy because the things he does well. I mean, so elite yak. He's got the speed with the ball in his hands. I love him as a ball carrier. I feel like he doesn't break off his routes that well. He doesn't win in contested situations. He's not great against press. His drops, they're focus drops all over the place, and then he alligator arms so many things too. Like his hands are abysmal, and so when I'm taking a size guy in round 1, I want it to be Cedric Tillman, right? I want it to be somebody who wins because he understands who he is and he's a size guy. And with Quentin Johnston, I just feel like I can't use him as a primary piece in my passing game. He just is a guy I'm going to scheme up looks for, screens and shit. I don't know. His use case really is strange to me, and I don't like that in the first round. I'd love him in the second round, but I don't think he gets there.
Do you think his use case has anything to do with the fact that his quarterback was Max Duggan?
To a certain degree,
I don't think that helps him, but
yeah.
I saw more good Max Duggan getting dropped by Quentin Johnston than more good Quentin Johnston getting wasted by Max Duggan. So there's some give and take there. And so then the other guy I wanted to bring up because he's simultaneously my guy and my not my guy, Rashee Rice out of SMU.
Tony, he used to both of mine. Both.
I will stop. I will completely stop.
No, you're good.
I'm sorry.
I'm safe.
Fine. Yeah.
I'll say what I like about him and still give you your runway on your not my guy.
Okay.
So what I like about him is that he's fallen down draft boards significantly.
Yes.
And because of that, I no longer have to worry about his failure points. I see him as a ball of clay. I think he can be Brandon Ayuk if he takes the same approach and hard-nosed focus on getting better that Brandon Ayuk did when his first year with Shanahan when he was put in the doghouse. Because he's got that athleticism. He just doesn't play like it. He plays just a different style than his body should have him play. And so I think if you can get him to unlearn everything he has about football and relearn, really decisive, creative route running and being a monster after the catch and everything, then I think you have a different player, and I'd be happy to take that in the later rounds. So that's the my guy side of it. And Shayne, I'll let you when you get there, I'll let you talk about the actual deficiencies that has him dropping down draft boards.
Yeah, gotcha. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, so if I had my original my guy, we would be keeping my guy and my not my guy on the same team, same roster, because not my guy is Jalen Hyatt. Because, and I mean, there's obviously reasons for a speedster in the NFL, but and I'm going to put this more to your point earlier, Tony, of the offense that Tennessee was running was beneficial to Hooker. I think it was more beneficial to Jalen Hyatt.
Oh yeah,
because
definitely. He didn't have to run
yeah,
routes.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
homie was
you're
just
now
running.
talking about first round hype off of just going out there and running straight down the
It's
field.
the same offense that got Corey Coleman drafted in the first round.
Yeah. So like, look, if he goes on day 2, I'm not
Fine.
as down on this pick. But if it's a day 1 pick, that's a waste of a day 1 pick.
And luckily, I don't think it will be, Zach. So
I hope not. I think that Dallas getting Brandon Cooks removes that from being a day 1 pick.
I kind of hope so, but I would also
I
be
hope
fine
so.
with them taking because I think it'd be funny.
It would be funny.
Yes. So yeah, like Tony said, and he gave me the runway. Rashee Rice is not my guy, and it really comes down to one thing. There was a few games that I watched, and I'm trying to remember specifically which game it was, but there was one in particular. I don't remember the name of the team. Where I swear, if you would have told me that this guy started playing football yesterday, I would have believed you. Like, there's just a lot of times on his tape where you're like, does this guy know what sport he's playing right now? And like, I don't see that ever, so it freaks me out. But then you see him make an absurd play, where it's just like he's just out there just figuring it out, right? And I respect that to a certain degree because like this guy was putting up numbers whenever he barely knew what was going on. It felt like half the time, right? And I think there's something there. And like you said, Tony, the ball of clay aspect is really cool because you could teach this. Maybe you could teach this guy to like play, like so maybe like an Ayuk or somebody like that. But I just don't know like where I would draft him though. It's like I'm just so concerned that he won't be a football player for me. And maybe that's okay if you take him in the 5th round or something like that. I don't think he'll fall that far at this point. But if he did, I'd be more willing to take the chance because like 5th round picks flame out all the time. But man, it's just it's hard to watch some of his statement. It's just really difficult to wrap your head around this guy being really popular early on in the draft class, and then teams are like, I think people started to realize like, it's not always like that. There's games for sure, but it's tough. But yeah, we'll move on to the tight end position here. Less guys that I don't like, I will say. This one was a little bit more difficult, but because it's a really good tight end class. My guy, and I think I might steal this from one of you possibly. Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion.
He was one of my reserve choices.
Yeah, okay. The thing with him, one is he's from a just technical standpoint the most athletic tight end prospect ever. And obviously, like athleticism isn't everything, especially the position that is as technical as tight end can be at times. But when you watch him, you kind of see it. You know what I mean? Like you get what, like you can maybe not that he's the best athlete at tight end ever, but you see the athleticism pop off. The size is great. He's really developed over the past few years after leaving Penn State to go to Old Dominion. I think he can put even more weight on and still be a really good athlete, which is really good. And you see the building blocks of a starting caliber tight end. And I think if you can get that guy in the 4th round, if you're a team that wants to dip into this tight end class but doesn't need a starter early or even the next maybe year or two, this is a guy you can take on day 3, hopefully, if he falls that far. We'll see about that because, again, his athleticism might push him up. But if you need a guy to start for you in like 2 years, I think that this is the guy that you should take and bet on because all the athletic tools are there like we talked about. The size is there. He could probably get better in the run blocking game just because I think he can get bigger than he already is at about 250 at 6'7". I just really like the upside with him a lot, especially because you can get him later than some of the other guys in the class. But let's move to Zach. Who's your top my guy for tight end?
Yeah, so my guy, as I said, I'm going with my number 1 tight end, and that's Dalton Kincaid, because like, man, I want that so bad on my team. Just
it's fun.
We're talking about some of these like big body wide receivers that we're like, man, we wish they would play like a big body wide receiver. And then you got Kincaid out here, just like, no, this is my domain. This is my now. What's the dude? I see. This is how little I've watched. I've just grown slightly. Georgia's dude.
Darnell Washington. Yeah.
Oh no! The one coming out next year.
Michael. Yeah. No, Brock. Yeah, Brock Bowers.
Brock Bowers. Right?
Yeah. Like it's just like some of these guys that are out there right now that are coming over the next few seasons, like Kincaid,
disgusting.
Bowers, like the tight end position is about to be like completely and utterly revolutionized just because
I
size is
hope
getting
so, because
obscene.
it's been rough at tight end outside the top like 6 or 7 guys for the last few years.
You know,
so.
well, exactly, and that's been the thing, and like, because I guess we're all now more attuned to that because of fantasy football, because that's like always it. Like,
Yeah,
oh, if you
tight end
you
30
that
and
tight end
12
early,
with the same person.
oh man, it's round 7. I don't have a tight end. Crap, I don't want to take Gerald Everett. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm excited to see what he will bring to a NFL roster, especially coming out of Utah, where like some of these schools where you're like, oh man, that's cool. I like to see this, like some of these other schools getting some recognition, like really high for like some of these positions that you're just not used to seeing all that often.
Yeah, absolutely. I like him a lot. He's actually at this point he's my top tight end.
I mean, he seems to be, and I know I'm like going right off for the top one. It's pretty consensus, but like again, as I said, I'm not I don't want to like
no, be like,
throw
oh,
a player out there, and then all of a
really
sudden
like
be like,
Luke
oh
Shoemaker out
shoot,
of
yeah,
Michigan.
no, I
Yeah.
completely misread that.
But yeah, go ahead, Tony. Who's your top my guy tight end?
So my guy is Tucker Kraft, South Dakota State Jackrabbit. He's fun. It is impossible not to helmet scout this one.
Right.
Because he is athletically identical to former Jackrabbit Dallas Goedert. You know, is very similar type player. I think similar deficiencies coming out of college too. Like he's not super refined as a route runner. He's great in the quick game, like finding space in zone and everything. He's a sufficient blocker, but there's more to be had there. I just think like you get him in the building on at late round 3, I assume is kind of his range.
He's probably a day 2 guy, like late day 2, I would imagine.
Yeah. So like you get him there in round 3, you have him as your like developmental tight end 2. Especially maybe if you have like an aging starter. Like I think it's a really smart bet. I think we can see him become what Dallas Goedert has become in the league, which is just a versatile, like a solid A tight end. Like, you want him on your team. He does everything well. And that's where I think Tucker Kraft can be.
So yeah, I get that for sure. I like him a lot. So I have 2 not my guys, but I'm going to go with the one that will raise more eyebrows, I think, just because it's more fun that way. Because I mentioned Luke Shoemaker just because I thought it'd be funny, but he's also one of my guys I think is like not going to be as good as some people think he is. But that's farther down the board. Michael Mayer. Now I'm saying this because at this point in the NFL, I think that a guy like him, who is a very, very quality tight end, he does everything well. Does he move the needle enough to be taken in the first round? That's kind of my question at this point, because you see guys like him that are these quality all-around tight ends, and they're valuable to offense. I'm not saying that like if you don't have Travis Kelce, you're bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. But is he going to elevate an offense in any way? Is he going to fundamentally change how your offense works? I don't think so. And I think because of that, taking him day 1, which again is what a lot of people were thinking with him for a long time, I don't know if that's the best use of a pick there when there's just more valuable positions, especially if you're not going to get a freak or a guy like I think Kincaid, for example. That's why he's my tight end 1, because I think he could fundamentally change how you run your passing offense. I really think he can. Is he going to be a great run blocker ever? Probably not. Do I care about that? Not particularly, because I'm not going to ask him to do that. I'll find someone else who can do that, and there's guys who will be able to do that. And I think because of that, it's hard for me to justify taking him where I think he'll end up getting drafted. Now, if you can get him, the middle of day 2 or, somewhere in the middle of round 2 specifically, and you don't have a starting caliber tight end, I totally get it, because he'll probably be able to come in, unlike a lot of tight ends, and actually be able to contribute year 1. But I just don't know if he's ever going to bring enough value and change things for you to be taken in the first round, if that makes sense. So I'll let Zach go here for his. You said that you don't really have a not my guy necessarily, but
yeah. For the rest of the positions, like quarterback, running back, wide receiver get a lot of hype, and like the rest of them, I really haven't dug.
If you don't have a not my guy, then we can let Tony kind of talk. You can chime in on what we think about.
But like you were saying, I think it's very interesting. You're talking about like how all the Michael Mayer has all this first round hype, but like, is there really room this draft for multiple tight ends to be taken in the first round outside of Kincaid?
It's hard.
And like Darnell Washington's the other one, right?
Yeah, Washington. Like
hold off on him.
Yeah,
I got things to say still.
Oh, I know.
So let's go over to Tony. What were you going to say, Tony?
Yeah, I already know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've had this conversation before,
Yes, we
specifically
have.
when Shayne picked them to the Packers 15th in one of
I
our
still
mock
think
draft
that's a
episodes.
viable pick, by the way, but not
Oh no,
because
I
he's
don't
good.
disagree that it could happen.
Yeah,
I just wouldn't make it myself. And it is
right.
all
Yeah.
about, and Shane, I think you framed it perfectly with the Mayer conversation where
Yep.
like, and honestly, like Washington does this better than Mayer does. But if you're taking a tight end in the first round, you need to you need to scare a defensive coordinator. Like you need to make them throw away because everybody has a cookie cutter tight end game plan, right? You're just like, ah, yeah, we're just gonna let our will take him. Like if he's running around, like it's a tight end, he doesn't scare us, you know. If you're not going to change the way a defensive coordinator approaches you, you probably shouldn't be drafted in round 1. So I think your Mayer point is very interesting there. Now, Washington may change the way a defensive coordinator adjusts to you, but I don't think he does it in a way that is beneficial to the offense, maybe. Like I
It's
don't think you're
very
going to have to
yeah, it's very
react to him all
circumstantial.
that much. Like
Yeah.
my thing is he's just in college, he won by being a ridiculously large, ridiculously good athlete, size and strength. Everybody in the NFL has size and strength. Like I know Georgia, you're playing the best of the best, but you're constantly playing the best of the best when you're in the NFL. And he's just
There are no Vanderbilts and Mizzous.
yeah, that's very true. There's no Vanderbilts out there in the NFL, and so I just don't know
Jen.
if like I wouldn't add him in the first round. If he's there in the second round, hell yeah, I'm all about it. But as a first round tight end, I want more in the passing game, and
Yeah,
I want more than just like his. Everybody's like, oh yeah, he's like a offensive lineman who can go out and catch a pass. It's like, yeah, I feel like I can get that later too. So it's all
Ideally,
about
yeah.
his valuation in the first round for me.
Mhm.
With Washington.
Absolutely.
Which perfectly sums up my prompt. Is there really room for more than Dalton Kincaid to be drafted in the
Maybe
first
not.
round if there's other
Maybe not.
prime positions to be taken?
Yeah, maybe not at this point. That's kind of the
A bit too
question, I
much
think.
hype.
So, but we'll see. But let's move into the offensive lineman. I imagine like probably won't unfortunately get as much conversation, so we could probably speed up a little bit here. Who's your my guy for interior offensive lineman, Tony?
So for interior, I have a guy who's a tackle, which is I think very common in this draft class
It is.
specifically.
There's a couple guys.
There's not a lot of true tackles out there. So I have Tyler Steen, the left tackle from Alabama.
Yeah.
He 46 starts in the SEC at tackle.
Yes.
This man is battle tested.
Man.
Now, granted, 4 years was at Vanderbilt. And also his first year at Vanderbilt, he played defensive line, and then he just was immediately starting at tackle. And he's started games at the right, he started games at left. I think his deficiencies, though, like I don't know, his just getting out into space and cutting off edge rushers like from an outside perspective, I think he gets beat I think he gets beat consistently in the NFL. So protect him by moving him inside to guard. I think everything else, he's veteran, he's experienced, he's got the nuance. I think he can be a starting guard, a plus starting guard. And I don't hear him talked about too much in that sense, just because he's always played tackle. But I'm a big fan of Tyler Steen on the interior.
Yeah, I like him transitioning to interior. I think that he just doesn't have the foot speed and the technique to hold up a tackle. And it sucks because I think he played well in the SEC overall, but there's reps where you see him face guys who are going to be in the NFL. I don't think he has, like I said, the ability to protect the blind side, especially. So I'd like to see him hopefully get drafted as a developmental guard or something like that. So we'll see. Do you have my guy for interior offensive line, Zach?
I do. And this man is based off of his ability to be versatile across the entire line. And I'm going back to my TCU baby.
I love
Steve Avila, offensive lineman. This man has played center. This man has played guard. This man has played tackle. He's played left and right guard. He's played right tackle, specifically for the tackle. Like, look, as we said, I think a couple shows ago, versatility and depth in offense and the offensive line in the NFL is not great. There's a reason why there are bad offensive lines in the NFL. So if you have a chance to grab a guy who you literally could possibly stick anywhere across the line, that's insanely valuable. And like like, look, he played left guard for the national championship run this year. So maybe you're like, oh, we keep him at guard because that might be where his best tape is. But then also, if you happen to have a center that goes down, you can also reel back in, and the team can be like, oh, well, he snapped the ball for a season before. So we have that he has that in his repertoire that if somebody absolutely goes down, we have a backup. So like his versatility and value across the line is just going to be absolutely coveted.
Yeah, I think that the easy way to sum him up, in my opinion, is if you can't get Peter Skoronsky on day one, get Steve Avila on day two.
Yes.
That's what you should do. My top guy, my guy, John Michael Schmitz, kind of an easy one. There's a lot of conversation about center in this class, and like some people really like Joe Tippmann, which I'm a Wisconsin guy. I get it. I have my own things with him, but like Luke Whippler, I don't think they compare to John Michael Schmitz. I think that he's clearly the best center in the class, and I think if you need a day one starting center, if you can get him, even if it's late day one at this point, because I know like people say like, oh, Creed Humphrey was drafted in second. It's because people don't draft, they don't take center, they don't, and even though it's clearly so valuable when you have a great one, I think that a team like the Giants could really use him at pick 25 even. There's value there even that high, I think, which is why he's one of my guys. He does everything very well. He's not as athletic as some other centers that have come out, which is probably going to ding him a little bit, but I don't think it's really an issue for him necessarily, for sure. So yeah, I'll go with him. Who's your not my guy, Tony?
Yeah, so this was tough because interior offensive line is a really tough position to evaluate and scout. Yes, so I rely a lot on like following Brandon Thorne and like that Mitchell Schwartz and the way that they look at it, because I know they're going to know better than I ever will. Yeah. And someone I'm seeing getting the first round hype that's cooled off a little bit, but that I just don't understand is Osiris Torrance. Okay. I like him as a player, but if you're drafting a guard on day one, history says they have to be like transcendent as a prospect. Like they have to be really damn good. You have to know for a fact they're going to start day one and be impact, great, long career starter. Osiris Torrance, I just don't see the special. Like I don't think Steve Avila, I think, is better than him at guard. He's big, he's exciting, but I don't see it in round one, and that's kind of that's where I'm at with like a not my guy. Like I'd happily take him at 59. I don't see round.
I don't
one.
think he has the athleticism at guard to be taken in the first round. I think you have to be a special athlete who can pull and who can get to second level and do all this stuff. I think if you draft him to a power scheme on day two, then he'll be fantastic for you for a while. But again, if you're like a Shanahan scheme, if you're one of those, like he's not probably going to be a valuable starter for you.
It would feel like a Laken Tomlinson, like, or
which he made it work.
Joshua Garnett
Josh Garnett with Stanford guard second round, first round.
I think he was a first round
pick. It was a first round for the Niners. Yeah, just not the type of player that's going to be valuable in those schemes. I know, Zach, you said you don't have any other not my guys, so I'll move to mine here. Yeah. This guy is getting top 50 hype, and I get it. This is what happens with these guys, but I just worry that the only position I think he could possibly bring value to that spot would be a position he just hasn't played. Cody Mock out of North Dakota State. I think that center is the position he'd be able to hold up at in the NFL. And the NFL Stock Exchange, if you guys are familiar with them,
I love them. Yeah,
they talked about this too when they watched him. I just don't know if he has the functional strength to be a above average guard in the NFL. I think that he'd have to use his athleticism, which he does have as a center, to really make an impact. And he hasn't really played it. He played a little bit of it at the Senior Bowl. I think he got some reps there. And that's probably why, because I think he knows, and his agents are probably talking about like, hey, you might end up at center if you're going to stick. And I just don't know if I'm willing to take a top 50 pick on a guy who hasn't played the position he's probably going to have to play. I don't think that's pretty crazy to say. I like him. Yeah. I think he's a good option if you want to take a guy that could play center, hopefully at some point on the late day 2, early day 3. But as a top 50 pick, I think it's just too much of a transition there for him to do that. So moving on to tackle here. So it's tough because there's two guys that I want to choose as my guys, right? And I like them both. I went with Devon Jones as my guy. I just love like the size profile, and he's a better athlete than a guy like Orlando Brown Jr. who's been able to make it work in the NFL. I'm not worried as much about that part of it, but his floor to me, because of how it's just going to be so hard to move him not only in the running game, but again, it's going to be hard to get around him in the passing game consistently, even for some of the speed rushers, just because you have to get around him. You do. He's just a hulking person. I think that there is legitimate concerns, and you've talked about it, Tony. I know about his ability to handle speed at the next level, and I get that. But after a certain point, like when you get past the top couple guys in this class, everybody has an issue with them. And I would rather take a guy who I know can, one, clear out lanes in the run game if you're in a power scheme, and have a floor, like a higher floor as a pass protector, just because you literally cannot run through him. You have to get around him as with speed, and obviously certain rushers are just not going to be able to do that against him. So I really like him a lot. But what's your top my guy, Zach?
Yeah, so my top my guy was offensive tackle. Yeah, offensive tackle. Sorry, I was looking at my list. Anton Harrison. We haven't talked about him a lot.
Not really, but he's definitely a good pick there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just like Oklahoma is one of those schools that I don't think people like really take a step back and realize like, no, they're a big offensive line school. He's got the size, he's got the protection, he's got all of that, and I mean, we've got Paris Johnson and all these other players that we've talked about, but I really have not heard his name come up. And just from the stuff that I've seen, like I'm like, this could be a pretty solid pick. And like I haven't heard any day one hype. Really, I haven't seen him in many mock drafts at all. Like I'm just like,
he's on that fringe of day one, day two. So yeah, for sure. Tony, what's your top my guy?
So my top my guy is a chalky name, but I think he doesn't get respected as highly as he should. Broderick Jones, tackle out of Georgia.
I thought about doing him, but again, a little too chalky for me, but I get it, yeah.
I get it, he's raw, and that's why he's, not the consensus top tackle, but he's played the least snaps out of anybody. He's young as hell. He's only 21. The traits and the tools are all there.
Yes.
Like, you see that frame, and you just see the potential to be elite. The way he finishes, the way just... Right now, we're seeing a guy just learn how to play football and doing it at a high level for Georgia. Imagine when he gets with an NFL
national championship teams. Yeah.
Imagine him with an NFL O-line coach. I think he has the highest potential of any offensive lineman in this class, and so I think I'm coming around on him. Like, I'd happily take him in the top 10. I think just because of the upside case of what he can be.
A guy that is not overly tall but is very, very long like him is so interesting because he has more of the leverage advantage than most tackles will have, but he doesn't have a length disadvantage. And that's kind of the thing that makes him, I think, the most interesting to me, because he is definitely more of a pass protector at this point than necessarily run blocker, but the run blocking potential with his frame is so interesting to me too. Like, get him out on the move in front of guys. Like, it'll be fun. I think whatever team takes him, especially even if he doesn't get on the field immediately, because he does have stuff to work on. Like you said, the physical upside is just above from really anyone else in the class, I think, especially at tackle. So with my top not my guy, this is a guy that he started to get a little bit of hype after the combine because of how great of an athlete he was. Blake Freeland from BYU. I don't think he can play tackle right now in the NFL. Like, even as like a back, I don't know if I trust him to go out there. Like, he has all the athletic tools, right? But he's not very strong. He's light for his size, and that's probably why he tested so well. Part of why. I just feel like he just isn't there as a prospect at this point. If you take him on day 3 and develop him, fine. You can maybe get a guy who's a good pass protector just because he has the feet for it and everything else. But I think that if you take him as like this one of the top tackles after the consensus guys who could be possible starters, he's probably going to disappoint if you have to play him early. So
I would use him the same way I would use Darnell Washington.
Yeah, well, fair, exactly. Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny you say that. But what's your top not my guy, Tony?
So it was your top guy, DeJuan Jones.
I figured.
It's so. Listen, we always talk about and acknowledge the risks and potential downside of outliers without ever really acknowledging that outliers happen on both sides of the curve. We know what it means to be too small to play in the NFL. There are not many people 6'8" and what is he, 3...
He was listed at 1.3.
374.
I think he's 374, yeah.
6'8", 374. This man could lose 3 to 4 inches, lose 40 to 50 pounds, and still be a large NFL tackle. So, we've never seen it before, and a lot of his deficiencies are due to that size, which tells me that it's like hard to work around them. Like he plays high and he can get out leveraged because of that. And then like he did a good job of handling like speed rushers at Ohio State, but I think the speed in the NFL is different. Like imagine Von Miller just like running around him without a care in the world. As a first round prospect, I'm all the way out. As a second round guy, I'd still be kind of all the way out, but I could understand it. I would pick him, where I'd pick Spencer Brown. Just like pick the freaky tall athletic guy and hope for the best, but don't count on him to be a day one starter.
How did people pass over a 6'8" individual?
What do you mean?
That's
just Stroud throwing the ball over him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's insane.
He's on the edges, so you could.
That's insane.
So like, I do understand the concerns, Tony. When I watched him at Ohio State, a lot of the things that you'd be concerned about a guy being that big, I just didn't see pop up very much, and that's why I'm willing to project it to work out. Plus, I think that, like you said, he has room to lose 30 pounds and still be gigantic, and I think if you can get him to do that in the NFL, I think it'll really change his outlook against speed too, especially. Like he has room to lose weight, and you look at Mekhi Becton, he's transformed his body apparently this offseason. Like if he can do something similar to that, especially over the course of his first 2 years, you could have a higher ceiling as a pass protector, but you still get the big hulking run blocking type too. So, but I do understand the concern because this is a guy that could easily flame out if he doesn't get his weight to where it needs to be and everything else. So, move on to interior defensive lineman here. You're up, Tony, with your top my guy.
Yeah, I've talked about him a ton, and I wanted to like bring up a different name just for shits and gigs, but nah, it's Keanu Benton.
Yeah, it is. I know. Take my Wisconsin boy.
He can play one tech or three tech. He can even play nose if you want him to. Like he's balanced. He's powerful. He has a PhD in leverage. The man is a former wrestler. Like, and he understands leverage. I just think he's great at penetration. He's great at sitting and just letting the play happen and then crashing in and closing it. So everything I want out of a defensive tackle in today's NFL, I could get in Keanu Benton. I'm in love with the guy. It's just such a fun prospect.
Yeah. All right, Zach. Do you have anybody other than him? Because I know you were upset
I do, and I really hope I don't take your other one because
you probably will.
Kalijah Kancey.
Yeah, that's who it is.
Yeah, I had Keanu Benton and Kalijah Kancey.
I have a third just in case.
Okay, awesome. But I mean, like, look, we're about to talk about edge rushers, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, well, like that's what he looks like." But we just talked about outliers, but this is like a better outlier. So like it. I guess the concerns come like if you are on that outlier, you like we want to see it on tape and like you want to see it consistently, and that's where like he's undersized, but he consistently shows being able to win on the inside of the offensive line. So that's where like he might be a bit on the smaller side, but he definitely seems to be worth that chance and that pick. And like shoot, I take him on my team. Throw him on the Dolphins. I'll take him.
Yeah. So my thing with Kancey, I'll get to my guy because of course I had to go third in this one of all the positions I really like. So with Kancey, my whole thing is again, you talk about outliers, right? I get it. He's 6'1", 283 pounds, not very stockily built. He looks like he could be 260. And yeah, you could see like, oh well, how's he going to hold up in the run game? It's like he might not really, but nobody outside of maybe Jalen Carter, and that's because he's Jalen Carter, nobody whooped more ass in the inside of defenses in any conference like Kancey did as a pass rusher for Pitt. It just some of the stuff he put on tape is just hilarious. Like you ask, I don't care what guard you ask in the NFL. There's a lot of good guards. I don't know many who realistically in a phone booth is going to keep him from getting past. Like he's too ridiculous. Could he wash out because again he's just too small? Maybe you can't play him on early downs a lot in the NFL. There's just not many guys that you could ask to come in and rush the passer like he can, and it's just hard for me not to be willing to take him. Maybe not super early, but earlier than I think a lot of people would be willing to do it. But I'll focus on the guy that I have left to talk about, Brian Brzee from Clemson. I think that one, he has a ton of untapped potential, and a lot of that is not his fault. A lot of it is just circumstantial injuries, obviously the death in his family with his sister. Like there's so much surrounding him that was like negativity that I just feel like I have to have him as my guy because I would be willing to take him around the 20 range, where a lot of people have him more in the 40s at this point. And I get it. Again, he showed flashes, but he didn't have a lot of consistency. He's not he plays I think, bigger than he actually is from a size standpoint. So that's nice as well. But there's definitely room for concerns there. But I feel like at this point he's just getting too much hate. This is why I had to put him as my guy. But what do you think for your not my guy, Tony?
So I just want to say I'm glad you brought up Brzee because he was on my potential list for not my guys, but all the reasons that he would potentially make that list are completely out of his control, completely understandable how they would affect who he was last year.
That's my thing
and
with it, yeah.
Hearing even more, can't imagine how much he had to deal with mentally, but he also had like a strep throat that turned into like a kidney infection.
Yeah.
He lost like 40 pounds right before the season started. So
he had all sorts of stuff happen. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
I'm coming around on him more than I ever thought I would. I still wouldn't be happy at 27, but I'd understand the pick, and I'd learn to. He's a guy you want to root for, like just because so many things have gone against him, and he can be such a special player. Yeah. And if he takes control of his life, like it can be really special. So glad you brought him up. Not my guy. You guys just talked about Kalijah Cansey. We've done this a few times now.
I know. It's coming. Yeah.
So. Outliers. We have this conversation a lot. The size is concerning. 6'0", 280 on the dot. It's concerning, but it's manageable, especially the way he plays.
Yes.
My concern is there is no NFL defensive tackle in history that has made a Pro Bowl with arms as short as his. Yes. There's no that have made more than like 20 starts with arms as short as his. He would. It's the Bryce Young being the smallest NFL quarterback in history. It's that. Like, he has the shortest arms at defensive tackle in NFL history, basically. Like, if you're going to be small, I need you to have some length to, like, still be able to fight in the trenches. Because, I would just put him on, I would just run right at him every snap and know at some point I'm going to win. Like, it's a winning proposition. I think if I draft him, I can't play him more than 30% of the snaps his rookie year. I think at 3rd and 8 or longer is the only time I'd let him on the field. And at that point, I'm not drafting that guy anywhere near the first round.
I get where you're coming from. Yeah,
I have Ed Oliver still on our team. Like, I know what short arms mean for a smaller defensive tackle. It is a detriment. It ruins anything. Like, you can never be more than just a flash in the pan kind of player if you have that short of arms. So I'm very afraid of Kalijah Cansey's arm length, and that's where I'm out on him.
That makes sense. I get it. My top, not my guy at this point, is Siaki Ika, the defensive tackle from Baylor.
I like that one too.
He did. I know he's a nose tackle, but at some point, like his testing, disgusting, and like he looks a little bit better than that on tape. But again, he's a first and second down player. I think he's an effort guy in the passing, and I think he can just work his way to the quarterback like a lot of those guys can. But I don't view him as any sort of pass rusher whatsoever. I think NFL quarterbacks especially will not be afraid of him at all because they can just run right around him and right past him if they need to. And I think that if you take him anywhere earlier than like the 5th or 6th round, you're not going to get really anything out of him for what he can do. So pretty straightforward. For edge, so there's so many good edges, right? In this class especially, like there's a couple guys that I'm not huge on, and it's not because they're not good, and it's because I just think the value might be not right based on where they'll get drafted. But for my guy is B.J. Ojulari from LSU. I know, Tony. I'm sorry. Like, there's another guy that, like, if that is your top, my guy, there is another guy I could throw.
I have another guy too. I was prepared for this.
So he's of all the guys who I think aren't going to be drafted early, he has the best array of pass rush moves, right? He doesn't have, I don't know if he'll have the power profile to use a lot of his power moves, but his speed to power is there whenever he can get it to work. And he has he's shown almost everything you need to show as a pass rusher in terms of just skill set and move set to be able to make it work at the NFL level. That the size profile doesn't really bother me. That's kind of what it comes down to. I think if you need a guy who can come in and be a productive pass rusher day one for you, even if he's never a number one necessarily, I think he's definitely the top candidate for that. If you can get him like the top of the 2nd round for sure. But Zach, who's your top my guy for edge?
All right, so obviously Will
Anderson. No.
Obviously he's like the number one. However, I'm a big fan of Tyree Wilson, and so And when it comes to defensive picks, and I said this earlier about like when I went really heavy with my guys for Big 12 offenses. However, if you have a Big 12 defensive guy who is that high up on boards and they're talking about him, Big 12 defenses are awful.
Yeah.
That means he's doing something that a lot of
Other
people
guys
are like,
aren't doing.
that a lot of guys aren't doing. And it's like popping out to be like, oh man, yeah, get him somewhere where he'll actually be worthwhile. And man, Tyree Wilson is just like, I wouldn't even like, we're not, it's not, I'm not an anomaly or anything like that, but like, he's just like built perfectly to be the edge rusher, the 6'6", 275, 36-inch long arms. Like, he's just ready to go and just use all that power to just get to the quarterback. And I'm excited to see him. If he makes it to Seattle, that defense is going to be monstrous again.
All right, Tony, what's your top my guy?
So my top, yeah. So it was Bijou Abdullah. You did him justice. He's a very fun prospect. The only thing I'll add is any player that earns the number 18 at LSU has special character. Yeah, they have special character. Like they are a lightning rod in the locker room, and so that's just another plus in his
so another check mark from LSU for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So the guy I will talk about is Derek Hall from Auburn. Another guy that I just think an SEC guy who isn't getting a ton of like round one love, but who I would probably take over some of the other guys in round one. I love the way that he disengages from blocks. I will say he puts himself in position to disengage from blocks more often than I'd like to see. He has a variety of pass rush moves, but he always tries to win through the tackle. And I think that he has the requisite speed and athleticism to win around the edge, and I just haven't seen it. So I would like to see him try to build that bend into his game, build the speed around the corner into his game instead of just always trying to attack the tackle. But he can get off of blocks. He fights with his hands and he disengages and he goes and he destroys the quarterback. So I'm very excited about his upside, and the fact that I'm seeing him like available in round 3 sometimes is crazy to me. Because I would take this guy at the top of round 2. Even if depending on how the board fell, like I wouldn't be mad at the team for drafting me at late day 1. So I'm really, really big fan of Derek Hall.
Yeah, it's funny you mention him because he wasn't going to be a not my guy or anything, but I think the concern with him is, like you said, I don't think he has the bend to be an above average speed, which I don't think he has to be successful, but I would love to see it. It would change his evaluation for me, but I just don't view him as that type, unfortunately.
I think he can be like what Shaq Lawson is, like
and that's fine.
A power run defender with some pass rush sack upside. Like I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I think so too.
During a little bit of that, I was half looking because I did not know what you guys meant about 18 for LSU, and that's another check.
Pretty sweet. Yeah. So for my top, not my guy at edge, and it's more just because I think that it really is. It's just a tough evaluation. Myles Murphy, Clemson. You look at 2021, and we did this for Cedric Tillman, so like I can't really say that like I have to like take this into account. I do. His 2022 is just not anything similar to 2021. Like 2021, Myles Murphy probably deserves to go in the top 15 of this draft. 2022, Myles Murphy is a mid-second round, early third round pick. And I think you have to just kind of figure out how much of it was, like he said, there's injury questions with it and other things. Like, I just don't know really what to do with it because I just didn't see the same guy. And if it really was just injury, then maybe he can play more like a guy that's going to get drafted in the top 15. But even like late day 1, like I'd be willing to take him to a team that really needs edge help, like Chiefs at 31 or some of these other guys, but like, or some of these other teams, but anything higher than that. And I'm just scared of what he might look like, especially early on. It was tough to look at his tape from the 2 years prior, or like from 2020 versus 2022. It was just kind of jarring, the difference between them, I would say. But what's your top, not my guy, Tony?
Yeah, so this is crazy. I had to count. I think this is the 5th time my not my guy has been somebody else's my guy, and it's Tyree Wilson.
I thought about him too.
So
I thought
it is, and once again, it is all about where
value.
he is currently being projected.
Yes.
So there's a lot to like about him. I love the frame, the potential. Where my worry is he was a late career breakout at Texas Tech. He had to transfer away from the SEC. I mean, there's probably other factors there. I don't want to hold it against him too bad. But it took him a while to get going. He reminds me of Jermaine Johnson in like one really, really exciting year amid a career of just kind of meh and then exciting tools. And he's going to be 23 to start the season, so not like old, but if I'm betting on upside, I'd want an edge rusher to be a couple years younger. So I would take him in the 20s. I'd happily take him in the 20s. And similarly, last year, Jermaine Johnson was getting hype at like the potential pick at number 4, and then the Jets turn around and get him at like 26 or something. Yeah. I think
that won't happen this time, but I think
it won't happen this time. But I think that's what deserves to happen for the prospect. So, like, I would happily take him in the 20s. I would not sniff him anywhere near the top 10, and he's going to go top 10. So that's why he's not my guy.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with me, we'll move on to linebacker in a second, but with Wilson, I don't think he disengages from blocks well enough at this point. Right. I think he can push guys. I think he can push pockets. I think he can do all that. But I think when the quarterback sees that and breaks away, he can't go get him. I just don't think he can disengage.
And he's also kind of laid off the ball and high, and so like he can.
There's just a lot to learn for him still. Yeah, there's just he has a lot to learn still. I think is the main thing. And if he learns it with that skill set, he'll be scary. But you have to teach him that. So it's right. We have to be the right fit. I think Seattle would be a great fit for him, but I just don't. I wish he took him at 20 and not 5.
Yeah, so, that'd be nice.
Yeah. But linebacker. So we're gonna go back to Tony here to start. Here, who's your top linebacker? That's your favorite, my guy.
So because I've talked about a couple other names pretty frequently, I wanted to bring a new name into it, and that's Dayan Henley from Washington State. Okay. Man, I'm good at this.
Listen, me and you, I don't know, man. Something's going on. Go ahead, Tony.
So he's small, but he plays big. I like how decisive and violent he is. He's just he makes a decision and he goes all out and he tries to just blow it up. Coverage skills pretty sufficient already. I think there's upside to be had there because of his movement skills.
Skill set is there. You can see
exactly. From when he's played he was a QB in high school. He was coming in as like a QB prospect, switched to receiver, switched to slot receiver, switched to safety, switched to linebacker. He's very new to linebacker. I think he has a lot of upside. I definitely have some worries about him playing like a traditional Mike role. I don't think he can do that. I think he's too small for that. But as somebody like a Sam or a Will, I want him in coverage and I want him triggering downhill, blowing up screens and whatnot. I'm very excited by his potential there.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your my guy here, Zach?
I'm gonna go with Noah Sewell out of Oregon.
Okay.
Oh my God. It's gonna be number 6.
Oh man, God damn it, Tony. I mean, the other one I had was Jack Campbell, but I feel like that was too chalk.
Yeah, he tries to not go chalk, and Tony just freaking shits on his whole day. No, it's cool.
We talk about versatility. Like the dude's explosive, and there's some push to move him more towards a edge rush position, and just have him being a rusher because he is extremely explosive, and I think he will be a very, very, very valuable asset to a lot of teams who need help in the running game, because right now there are a lot of teams that are awful against running the ball. Now I will totally say that there probably are some issues with his pass protection, but that's not necessarily where I was going with this pick. I was just day 2 value. I haven't seen him pop up much on round 1 mock draft, so I don't think he's going to be going that high. So I can see where his value is, and there is also NFL blood already in him. So
that is fair. Yeah, I'll let Tony talk about him. So my guy, other than Dayan Henley, because of course Tony had to go ahead and snipe me again. Dorian Williams, Tulane linebacker.
I love him.
Very fun, instinctive player. He kind of did a little bit of everything for them. I think in coverage he's very fluid. He's a really good athlete. Smaller player, so you'd hope that from him. But I love watching him kind of do the quarterback spy and then take off and go get him thing. Like that, the instincts to choose the right time, because there's multiple times on this film where you see him just trigger downhill and then go get the quarterback whenever he doesn't see him. He's waiting for his eyes to move off of him so he can go run in and take care of him. And I think he'll be very valuable to a team, because I think you can ask him to do that type of stuff early on and then try to develop him into more of an every down type of player. And his run defense, despite being smaller, I think in this not in the same level, but I think similar to JOK for the Browns, he uses his size to his advantage in the run game opposed to a disadvantage because he can slip in between players. He can trigger downhill faster than the linemen can get their hands on him. He doesn't play like a guy who is 228 pounds in the run game because of his athleticism and his instincts. So really like him a lot. So who's your top not my guy, Tony? I think we know.
Yeah, so it's Noah Sewell.
Yeah.
The first thing I have written down is not a modern NFL player.
Exactly.
I think
that's
if
the problem.
If you really transport him 50 years in the past and quarterbacks are smoking cigs,
even like 15 years ago, he would be pretty decent. But
then we're talking about a player. But he plays like he's on horse tranquilizers. This man is so slow to process and react, and his vision sucks. Like I am very, very critical of Noah Sewell as a prospect. I think he's strictly a 1 to 2.
Okay, that's wild because let me read you the sentence of what I'm reading right now. Sewell's trigger, overall athleticism, stack and shed ability, and instincts are plush traits.
Oh, so like I think the actual trigger once he decides, yeah, sure, fine.
But, but you're saying like to actually like get to the trigger.
Yeah, so he plays with like the understanding of linebacker that I play with, which is to say none. I think he can thump in the middle, and that's all he can do. I'm not letting him anywhere near the field if it's a passing down situation. Kind of the inverse of Kalijah Cansey. Like I only want him when it's clear run opportunities. So and he doesn't have special teams value either. So just wherever you would pick a guy, I just wouldn't pick a guy of that skill set personally. Like if you're only a 1 to 2 down player and you're only a run defending linebacker, you better bring some special teams ability because if not, you're not on my roster. I can't get around to the guy.
No, okay, yeah, fair enough. My top not my guy is Trenton Simpson out of Clemson. My problem with him ultimately is I think that if you just ask him to stick on to like a running back or a tight end, he can stick with him in man coverage. Don't ask him to play in space as zone coverage player. He just, it's not going to happen. He's going to get thrown at. He's going to be in the wrong place. He's a really good athlete. I think that he has a lot of upside because of it. But again, I think that if he's going to be like the first linebacker off the board, which some people think he will be, some people don't, that's just probably not going to go well early on. Like I just don't think so. If you take him end of day 2 and develop him and let him sit for a year and try to get him to a point where he can have some amount of value as his own coverage player and not just throwing him out there to cover a running back or tight end, then I think that he could make good on that pick. Anything earlier than that, just a little too early for me personally. Moving on to corner. There's so many corners.
There are. This is one of the few positions where I didn't have an issue.
Yeah, it's hard to pick a true my guy that like isn't being talked about a ton, especially. But I'll get Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami. Nice. I think he's the prototypical like press man corner. Like if you need somebody to step in day one and just do that for you, I don't know if he'll really ever be a great zone player, but I think if you just ask him to just go up and press guys and play true man coverage day one, I think he'll be able to do that very, very well. I think I would even value him as like an early day 2 guy at this point, even though I think a lot of people have him more as like a late day 2 guy. If that's what you need him to do, like if you need him to play all sorts of different coverages, probably not something you want to ask him to do early on. But if you just bring him in to play press man, like I would love if the Steelers don't take a corner at 17, like I'd be willing to take him even at like maybe, probably not 32, but 49 especially. Like that would be awesome if they just need him to come in and do that. But it's just
that
so many
pipeline
corners.
Of Miami Hurricane.
Yeah, listen,
to
that's
Pittsburgh
the problem.
Steelers.
That's the problem. Is I don't even want to think about it, but I have to because I think he's good. I think he can do that. But is in the back of my mind. I'm not gonna lie. We don't have to say who I'm talking about. We all know. But who's your top guy? Here's Zach.
So it is a first round guy.
Okay.
But it's not early. I love Deontay Banks. Banks.
That was my number 2. My guy,
and like, look, and we just talked about it with this draft. I mean, there are so many cornerbacks that are going to go in the first round. I don't necessarily think Banks coming 4th or 5th off of the board is a detriment to him. I think it just makes it better to get him to a better team that's actually going to be somewhat good. The athleticism is just insane. He's gonna do everything he can to stay with this guy and I'm excited to see what he does. I mean, I had Joey Porter there too, but I was just like, that seems, we talked about him so much and I didn't want to be like, oh, hey, here we go again. So yeah.
All right. What do you think, Tony? What's your top, my guy?
I love Banks, so I'm very happy you brought him up.
Yeah, I
So
would have
my
brought him up
guy,
second.
it hurts me to my core to do this because it's a Michigan Wolverine.
Oh,
Oh,
DJ,
But DJ
DJ.
Turner, man, he is speed. He is refined speed, and
Yes.
like to
Good luck
boot,
running
he's
past him. You're not gonna.
you're not going to.
It's not gonna happen.
He's susceptible to little curls and whatnot because of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. His deceleration
maybe
isn't as much.
maybe that's
he
what
can
the
overplay
Bills
it a bit.
need for Tyreek Hill.
I mean, we won the playoff game. Well, we'll leave it.
Oh man.
Oh, it's okay.
All right.
Skylar
But
Thompson challenge.
he's got great ball skills, a ton of production in terms of passes defense. I'd like to see him pick some more balls off, but I don't know. That's not the most important part of playing the position. I think he can get muscled a little bit just by stronger X
Yeah, he's not the
receivers,
biggest guy in
but
the world, yeah.
I'd very happily bet on he's so when he triggers on a ball, like he is
He
just
shows up
violent
there.
with it.
He's there
He's so
immediately.
fast. He's a disruptor, and I would very much enjoy that in any secondary. I was surprised by how much I liked him because I have an inherent bias against Michigan
Correct.
Wolverines.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. So my top, not my guy. I've been pretty consistent with this, and I stand by it. And there's another person that I'm not going to shout him out here because he doesn't need it. But there's another person that agrees with me on this, and that I actually saw this from as well, and it made me think about it and look into it. Keely Ringo. I think he should play safety in the NFL. I don't think he should play corner. I think that his lateral movement ability is good as good of an athlete as he is. I don't think it's good enough to hold up against anybody running laterally against him. I think if he's just running straight down the field, he still gets beat sometimes, unfortunately, which is the sad part. But I think that he could work out as a corner in that type of situation. But he doesn't have zone feel. He doesn't have zone instincts. His man ability isn't as good as you'd want for an athlete like him. I think if you can play him as like a strong safety and let him use, because he's great physically, he's a good tackler, like he could do all that stuff. I think he'd be much better as a safety, especially early in the NFL. Maybe he doesn't have obviously the same positional value then, so maybe you don't want to take him very early. But if you're going to take him like anywhere in the top 50 picks, if it's not to play safety, I'm not going to be comfortable with it, frankly. So that's where I'm at with him. What's your top, not my guy, Tony?
Yeah, for me, and it's a player who I think has a chance to completely dispel my concerns. It's Emmanuel Forbes.
I had him as an asterisk as my second again because it's tough.
So he's tall and he's lean and he's too lean, and the way that he plays, I don't ever want to change his play style.
No,
right? Like
that's the problem.
He plays physical press man. He explodes. He loves like hitting runners hard. His frame won't hold up if he's doing that to NFL players consistently. I will say he weighed in heavier at his pro day than at the combine, then at his play weight, and he said he's trying to get up to 180 because he understands that his play style requires a better, stronger frame. So if he's able to do that and maintain his athleticism, I'll be back in on him. But with his frame and play style, they just don't match currently.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, it's tough. He's a guy I want to like too, and I talked about how I think even just as he sits now, nothing changed. I think if you put him in like a cover 4, like off man thing, I think he can work because all the other things can stay. But it's hard to ask him to do what he did in college right now in the NFL. Safety, real quick, and this is the last position. I have two guys I want to talk about outside of what we're doing, but I want to do safety here real fast. Let's go back to Tony for my guy for safety.
So my obsession with Brian Branch is well documented, so I wanted to go with like a different player.
Yes.
And this is a guy who for a while was getting hype, trailed off, and after his testing, I don't think he's getting really any hype at all, but I'd gladly take in round 3. Chris Smith out of Georgia. He was a phenomenal back end, just free safety. He's small and his athleticism is like not great, so I understand why people are concerned why he's falling down boards. That might be the death of him, but I think he can step in and just be day one center fielder. Like he can start for you immediately and get good. Yeah, just ball production. He's got football IQ. Whatever he lacks in athleticism, I think he makes up for in being right. So
yeah, making right decisions. Yeah,
I would happily bet on him as my free safety.
All right, smart. What do you got for your top, my guy, Zach? Here for safety.
I think this is a guy that's kind of had a lot of like bad things happen to him recently, and it's kind of like taken some hype, I think, away. But J.O. Skinner from Boise State
Very
So
interesting
like
player.
a very interesting player, and I think a lot of his weaknesses can be very easily corrected. Like the big things are like he's too lean. Okay, well you can probably get some
Yeah,
weight on him,
when he's
and
6'4", it's hard to. Yeah.
exactly. And so there's stuff, and but like it's upsetting because like right before the draft, or the combine, his aunt passed. Well, not before the combine, like before the Reese's Bowl. So he was supposed to partake in that. Then his aunt died, so he missed those games. And then right before the combine, he tore his pec. So it's like, man, that really sucks. It's going to drop his pick, his value a bit. But I think that probably will end up being a very high value pick now because of how high he was looked at and all this stuff. It's just going to come right back to like I think being
Right.
a more positive for him, even though it's a tough situation right now.
Yeah, I get it. He's definitely a unique player. I mean, he's in that Jaron Curse build at safety of like the 6'4", like 200 plus pounds. Like very interesting type of player that
And he
he's
has the hands to like he's gotten the
Yeah.
interceptions. He has
Yeah.
the ability to break up the ball. It's just like, yeah, he needs to get a bit buffer
Yeah.
and like get
Yeah.
healthy again and stuff like that. But that's not necessarily that's hard.
Right, for sure. Especially get him into an NFL locker room there.
Yeah.
My top, my guy safety, Sidney Jones, from Illinois. Just a freak. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he plays way bigger than his size, especially as a hitter. Like he's got all the athleticism. The testing was off the charts. That whole you basically if you pointed an Illinois player in the secondary last year and said he's your guy, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Because Jartavius Martin, also a really good player too. Like if you take an Illinois D back that's in the class this year, it's probably going to turn out pretty well for you. So
Yeah.
no problems there. Who's your top not my guy, Tony?
Yeah, this one is a player that I expected to fall out of like top 3 safety rankings for the longest time, but he's still there. Antonio Johnson out of Texas A&M. I just don't understand him. I get it. Like he's got to play near the line of scrimmage. He's a box guy. He loves to trigger on the run. He's not very good in coverage. He's just so wildly inconsistent, and like his tackling is inconsistent. His processing is inconsistent. The way he takes on blocks is inconsistent. I just don't feel comfortable drafting a guy in the first 4 rounds that I just don't think is going to be in every like a startable safety. And I just don't understand that he's still high in rankings like that.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of box safeties in this class, so I'll quickly finish out with my not my guy, and then there's 2 guys I just want to give love to a little bit, and then we'll head out here. Long show, but talking about a lot of guys. My top not my guy, Trey Dean out of Florida. He was a guy that I wanted to like, and it's just like the athleticism isn't there. You can see it. I mean, the testing really confirmed that for sure. He just the bottom line is like I was hoping he could be a guy that could maybe be a different type of player than just a box safety in this class, and he's not the one to do it. Unfortunately, it's kind of what it comes down to. 2 guys I want to talk about briefly before we head out, though. Nickel specifically, guys, is what I want to talk about. I know I didn't have that position, so that's why I'm just going to talk about it real quick. Keitrell Clark out of Louisville.
Oh yeah,
The instincts off the charts. Play diagnosing, like everything is just unbelievable. It's insane. Like he's a guy that if you take on day 3, if you can get him at day 3 and play nickel, he'll come in and start for you immediately. And then Clark Phillips out of Utah, like that dude, like I don't think he'll hold up on the outside, unfortunately, even though he did play it for Utah a lot. But as a slot corner, the speed, the instincts, the ability to catch the football, like the ball skills. Yeah, I think 2 or 3 pick sixes this past year, 6 interceptions. Like love everything about him as a player. Just doesn't have the size profile to play outside, but I think he has everything else you need to play a really good day 1 slot player for somebody for sure. So, but that'll wrap it up this week for us, guys. We're gonna do one more show before the draft, obviously this next Sunday coming up. That's when we're gonna put our heads together and we're gonna try to figure out, okay, what is our final predictive mock? We're going to actually go through it together. We're going to kind of argue our points. We're going to go pick by pick. That's what I want to do at least. And we're going to see just kind of what we come up with for sure. And I think that will it be the most accurate one? Can't promise you that.
Yes.
But it will be ours.
It'll be my most accurate draft. That's what you can count on.
Maybe. Yeah, it'll be the one that we think is most accurate. So, but that'll do it for us this week. Definitely, if you guys have any questions for us, especially for the predictive mock, let us know down below. But that'll do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us this week.